One word, posted on social media, seen by every government, every military, every citizen of every allied nation. Cowards. And then four more words that no ally will forget. We will remember. That's what the President of the United States just called the nations that have stood beside America since 1949, not behind closed doors, not in a private call, on a public platform for the entire world to see. And what happened next has never happened before in the history of the Western Alliance. 8 nations, 8 countries that trusted America with their survival for 75 years. They turned around, walked away, and began building a nuclear shield without America in it. France, Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden, and Denmark, a country that lost 44 soldiers in Afghanistan answering America's call. But here's the question Canada's own national broadcaster just asked, and why every Canadian needs to hear the answer. Subscribe and hit the bell. This is the biggest shift in global security since the Cold War ended. Let me show you what was just broken and why it matters for every Canadian. For 75 years, every NATO ally, including Canada, staked their survival on one belief. America's nuclear arsenal would protect them. You don't build your own weapons. You don't build your own shield. You trust America with your life. And that trust was paid for with sacrifice. After September 11th, America invoked Article 5. The only time in NATO's history that clause was ever triggered, and allied nations answered. Over 3,500 allied soldiers gave their lives in Afghanistan, answering that call. Canada lost 158. The United Kingdom lost 456. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Denmark, the Netherlands, they all lost their people in a conflict that started because America was the one under threat. Hold that number in your mind, 3,500, because what comes next will hit differently. That's what loyalty cost. That's the price these nations paid for the promise that America would protect them in return. And the man who inherited that sacrifice just went on social media and called them cowards. Why? Because they won't send warships to help America in a war with Iran that America started without consulting them. A war that's blocking the Strait of Hormuz and sending oil prices through the roof, a war that NATO allies warned against. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger, Trump posted. Cowards, and we will remember. Now here's where this story takes a turn that nobody saw coming, because those nations didn't respond with words. They didn't write a letter. They didn't call a summit. They did something that hasn't happened in Europe since the Cold War ended. March 2nd, 2026. French President Emmanuel Macron stands inside the Ile Longue submarine base on the coast of Brittany. Behind him, a nuclear-armed submarine called Le Téméraire, and he announces what he calls forward deterrence. France will increase its nuclear warheads for the first time in 34 years. The last time France expanded its nuclear arsenal, the Cold War had just ended. But here's the part that changed everything. France will deploy nuclear-armed Rafale fighter jets carrying cruise missiles with 300 kiloton thermonuclear warheads to allied countries, not symbolic visits. Operational deployments, French nuclear weapons stationed on foreign soil for the first time in history. And then the cascade began. Germany was first, Europe's largest economy, a country that already has 20 American nuclear weapons stored at Buchel Air Base, started talks about carrying French ones instead. Chancellor Friedrich Merz confirmed it publicly. Germany is discussing whether German Air Force planes could carry French nuclear weapons. Think about that. The country that has hosted American nuclear weapons since the Cold War is now preparing to host French ones. Poland was next. Prime Minister Donald Tusk wrote, "We are arming up together with our friends so that our enemies will never dare to attack us." Poland didn't ask for American reassurance. Poland went to France, rapid fire. The Netherlands confirmed strategic nuclear talks with France. Belgium signed on. Greece, Sweden. One by one, country after country, ally after ally, 7 nations that spent decades trusting America chose France instead. And then there's the eighth country, Denmark, a founding member of NATO, a country that lost 44 soldiers in Afghanistan, the highest casualty rate per capita of any nation in the coalition. 44 families that lost someone because Denmark honored Article 5. Because America called and Denmark answered. And how did America repay that sacrifice? Trump threatened to seize Greenland, Danish territory. He mocked their military on social media. He called Danish forces two dog sleds. And Denmark's response? They began preparing to dismantle their own airfields in Greenland, physically tear apart military runways to prevent them from being used in an American operation on Danish soil. The country that lost 44 soldiers for America is now tearing up runways to stop America. Let that sink in. So let's add up what just happened and why Canada is paying attention. France has ordered the first nuclear expansion in 34 years. 8 nations have signed on: the UK, Germany, Poland, Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden, and Denmark. Nuclear-armed jets will deploy to Allied soil for the first time, and Denmark is dismantling airfields. Now here's where this lands at Canada's doorstep. Last week, a Danish reporter asked Prime Minister Carney directly, would Canada send troops to defend Greenland against the United States? Carney chose his words carefully. We stand foursquare behind the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. On France's nuclear initiative, he said Canada won't pursue its own nuclear weapons. But he praised Macron's framework. He called it important from a NATO perspective, from a European security perspective. He didn't close the door. And then CBC, Canada's own national broadcaster, published an analysis with a headline that should stop every Canadian. Should Canada follow? Think about what that question means. Should a country that shares the longest border on Earth with a nuclear superpower, one that's threatening Allied territory and calling its own partners cowards, start looking for protection somewhere else? Here's what exists right now that cannot be reversed. No speech, no deal, no election can undo what's already in motion. French warheads increasing, 8 nations committed, nuclear jets deploying, runways torn apart. Every warhead France adds sends a message. Every jet that lands on Allied soil sends a message. Every runway Denmark tears apart sends a message. The era of trusting one country with your security is over. If you think Canada needs to pay attention to what just happened in Europe and what it means for our security, hit that like button. This story cannot be buried. Now the question is, what comes next? Will more nations join France's shield? Will Canada deepen its ties to European defense? And what happens to NATO when its leader calls everyone else cowards? My question for you, do you still trust America to protect its allies? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear from every Canadian watching this. Here's what I see. For 75 years, Canada assumed one thing above all else. America had our back. We didn't build nuclear weapons because they had enough. We didn't build a massive military because theirs was bigger. We trusted the alliance, and now the man leading that alliance is calling everyone cowards, threatening to take Allied territory, demanding help in wars he started alone, and posting "We will remember" like a threat to the nations that buried their soldiers for American security. 3,500 Allied soldiers died in Afghanistan. Canada sent 40,000 troops over that mission. 158 never came home, and the thanks we get? Cowards. 8 nations just decided that's not good enough. They found another shield, France. A nuclear power that doesn't call its friends cowards. A partner that doesn't threaten to take your land. The Western alliance as we knew it is fracturing, and Canada, sitting right next to the country holding the hammer, has a decision to make. The door is open, but it won't stay open forever. The full story of how Carney is building new alliances while Trump burns old ones. That breakdown is right here. I'll see you there.